If I look back through my career, things that I've learned about the business, I learned a lot of things from people like Manny. There were people that learned how to deal with things in a certain mindset and a certain time frame. And so one of the things that I would say about the situation that I've learned the most is this is a head game. This business is a head game. I can run a financial calculator. I know a lot of you can run a financial calculator. I've been running numbers. I've been a deal architect for a long time. I've structured a lot of different financial arrangements. That's why people like notes so much. It's because so many different ways you can carve up a deal financially other than just buy low, sell high. But I've lived through a bunch of cycles. Started doing this in 1980. And I've seen some good times in the business, and I've seen some tough times. I've seen growth in the business. I've seen things that when they were steady and calm, and I've seen things when the waters were rough. It's a head game. 50% of this business is in your head. If you can get out of your head the muck, and you can refocus yourself, it's amazing what problems you can solve. Our next speaker would be the very guy that I would call if my head was in a muck and I needed somebody to help me sort through my thoughts and my processes, my emotions, my resources, the things that I could do to help solve my own problem because my head was thinking straight. This guy would be the single first guy I would call. And I thought it was so worthy of that conversation that we invited him to be a keynote speaker and let him share some thoughts with you. He is a former rugby team captain. He played international rugby for 6 years. He's a former cage fighter. He's a tough guy, but he's a tough guy mentally, and he knows how to get in your head better than anybody I've ever met. Would you guys please welcome Mr. Pat Precourt.
Thank you, Eddie Speed. That was awesome. Guys, thank you very much. Glad to be here. Right, let's get a little noise going on. Wake it up in here. We've got about an hour to have a little fun here, right? Eddie asked me, I don't know, probably a couple months ago, hey, Pat, would you be interested in doing a keynote presentation for me? And I'm like, sure, like I'm not a keynote speaker, but I'll take that on, right? This can't be too hard. And as I was talking to my wife this morning, like, honey, I got a problem. I got to do a keynote in like an hour. I ain't got it all figured out, right? So Eddie and Bob asked me to put together some slides for this presentation a few weeks ago. A few weeks in advance of a presentation of putting the slides together is a very, very difficult thing to do, right? I don't know exactly who's going to be in the audience, don't know exactly what I want to say, and I can't change the damn thing. So I want you to give me a little grace with the slide part of this, because we're going to change a few things as we go over this in the next hour. Fair enough? So I didn't mention a couple things here. I got to play rugby for 17 years of my career. In the last 6 of those, I got to play internationally, which was super duper duper cool. And it created some life-altering decisions that I had to make along the way here. And one of those is what Eddie just mentioned. You know, I said that I got involved with mixed martial arts, cage fighting, which, given the time of my life that I did it, most people would think either I'm insane, right? Or I've just lost my marbles, right? I was 42 years old when I first stepped into an MMA cage, which, including my wife, thought I was insane. The important lesson I learned, and it's funny things, you know, as Steve Jobs said so clearly, right? When you look back, you see how the dots connect, right? The one thing I took out of my career in fighting martial arts, and I still train, I still spar, I just don't fight competitively anymore. I'm 51 years old right now. I just got other things that drive me, right? But there was an event that happened the night before my first fight. So picture you're fighting on a card that has maybe 11 or 12 fights. I'm the 42-year-old guy, right, that's going in a cage against a 25-year-old guy. Not exactly a headliner, to say the least. So I'm right at the end of the fight card. Now it's like 11:30 at night, second to the last fight. Sitting in the locker room, there's no one in there but me, and I'm just trying to get my thoughts straight because the very next words out of the announcer's mouth are going to be my name, right? And once you're out there, there's something very unique about cage fighting. Once that door closes behind you, you go from being on a team to being extremely alone And it takes a lot out of you, right? But a gentleman walked in the locker room right before I went out there, and I was sitting there up on a table, so my legs were kind of dangling. He put his hands on my knees. His name was Mikey Burnett. He's one of the early UFC guys, back in what they called NHB, no holds barred fighting, right? Where they didn't use any gloves, and there's really no rules to it. He goes way back in the day. And he's put his hands on my knees, and he looked me square in the eyes. And he said, Pat, I'm going to tell you something that may not make sense right now, but you're going to get it. At some point, you're going to get it. Now, he can see I'm nervous and just, I don't have my stuff together, right? Looked me square in the eyes. We're like 3 inches away from me. He goes, this fight is won or lost right here, right now. That guy you're thinking about out there in the cage has nothing to do with it. The decisions you make here and now are going to dictate the outcome of that fight. And I learned very quickly that he's 100% right, and that's life. That's how powerful our brain is on the life that we experience, on the outcomes that we get. So I'm going to share some stories with you guys today, just about the journey that I've taken and how they've related to our entrepreneurial world, right? I've been a real estate investor since the late 90s, and spent a lot of time in that space. As I migrated through the educational space, I turned over to the other side, the personal development side of it, because I started to see that no matter how well you educated somebody, no matter what tools you gave them, that was not the turning point in whether or not they achieved their goals, achieved their successes. It had a lot more to do with what was going on between the years. I spend my time in that space. I have a wife of 25 years who's my biggest supporter, my biggest fan. She's awesome, with 3 wonderful kids, a 21-year-old, an 18-year-old, and a 13-year-old. Who has kids in here? I'm going to ask you guys, I'll ask all of you a funny question. Raise your hand if you're here. Some of you are like, that's the stupidest question I've ever heard. It's a trigger line I use at home. And I brought up the kids because oftentimes my kids will be in my house and not be present. Oftentimes I'll be in my house in front of my kids, but not be present. When I say present, I mean your head and your feet in the same place at the same time. Not off thinking about work, not off thinking about other things that are going on, stresses and anxieties and things like that. Not on our social media, but being present with the people that are in front of you in the moment. That's the only way you can experience life. There's this phenomenon going around, it's called forgetfulness, and people are wondering why they don't remember anything anymore. It's because they weren't present in the event that it happened. Like, damn, I wish I could remember that. Well, if you stopped and were present, things would be a little different. So I bring that up just to share with you guys, if you picked the 5 oldest human beings in this room right now and you asked them the most valuable asset they have, they'd all unanimously come up with one thing: their time. More valuable than anything they've done, their career, their wisdom, their knowledge, anything. The only thing that's at the top of the pile is the time, because it's one thing that's fleeing, the one thing we cannot get back. And you guys have committed a whole bunch of time to be here. Let's take full advantage of it. Let's be here, head and feet in the same place at the same time. That's the art of mindfulness, right? That way you'll get the most out of it. I'm not just talking about for my presentation, I'm talking about for this entire amazing event that we're about to experience here. Is that cool? Cool. So each time I say, are you here? You say, yes, I'm here. I have to call out my kids. I have to call out my wife sometimes at the dinner table. Say, honey, are you here right now? And immediately, I'm sorry, I'm back. So that's kind of how I want to set the tempo for what we're about to do. Now, I did put together this cool set of slides that are titled, Is Your Dream Worth Fighting For? Now, we can go anywhere we want with this, and as I've gathered a little more about our audience, we're going to take a little different path than all the slides identified, but it's going to be pretty cool. Now, Eddie mentioned that I did get to play rugby for a large part of my career. A neat part about that career is I got to play internationally for the last 6 years of my career before a series of bad concussions kind of took that stuff away, right? But in that time, again, you look back at how the dots connect. I learned a lot about myself. I learned how leadership played a role in everything that we do. And I'm going to kind of splinter that in here because we're all leaders, we're all influencers, we all can impact other people's lives. We all can leave an impact. A question I ask my kids all the time when they come home, and now my middle daughter just started college, so she's not home all that often now. My boy is 21, he's off doing his thing. So it's now I ask my little one, did you make an impact today? What was your impact like? How big was your dent? And what that means in our household is how much did you matter today? How much did you alter the universe in the direction that we're in? That creates a mindfulness about what we do and how we do. So we're not running on autopilot every single day. We're actually making a difference in being here on this earth. Now, if I had asked everybody, hey, listen, have you ever had a day where you worked your ass off, you're in the grind all day long, exhausted at the end of the day, but when you look back on the day, you really don't have much to show for it. You don't see the forward progress. And then that day repeated and turned into a week and into a month, and before you know it, a year passed by and not much change. It's not due to lack of work ethic, effort, it's none of that, right? So what's the answer? And we're going to try to answer that question today, so that every day that we go out, we make a difference, that it matters, that we do what we do. Is your dream worth fighting for? I'm going to speak to this group in the context of what I believe to be the one underlying common denominator, right? And that would be the entrepreneurial spirit. And if you look around you, it's really kind of hard to find other commonalities, since we've got everybody in here, every age bracket, every level of affluence, every level of success, and some starting their career, some ending their career, some looking to grow, some looking to retire. We have everyone in this room. But I do believe the entrepreneurial spirit is unique and strong in here. There's a gentleman back in the early 70s who was a failing actor. Failing in a context that he just hasn't made it yet, right? That was really struggling. He had virtually no money to his name, maybe $100 in his bank account. In New York, decided New York didn't work for him. Found his way out to California. Was a bit distraught, starting to give up on his dream of being a successful actor, right? But didn't quite give up. So he goes one night, he decides to watch a professional fight, goes to a boxing match between Muhammad Ali and I think his competitor was this guy, this Walter dude, right? And he saw in that fight, now Walter's a massive underdog. He's one of those kind of guys you fight just to build up your score or your reputation as a top-line boxer, right? It's just one of the guys to put in your record. But in that fight, he saw a guy go the distance, an underdog go the distance, stand up to everything that was thrown at him, go the distance, and in the fight, although he lost, he still knocked down the champ. And it inspired this man to get clear on what he was to do in life. It gave him his dream. And the next 3 days of his life, he sat down, he wrote a screenplay. 3 days straight, ground out a screenplay. When he was done with the screenplay, he started kind of farming it around. Now, mind you, he was pretty much homeless, had $100 in his bank, unemployed, no car, no nothing to show for it, and had actually just sold his dog, not because he needed the money from the dog, but because he couldn't afford to feed the dog and wanted the dog to have a better life. And this was his right-hand man. He finally found someone when he was interviewing for another role, and of course he wasn't good enough for that role. He showed him the screenplay. He said, "This is pretty good. We'll offer you a bunch of money for it." The bunch of money was, at the time, $360,000. Now, if that's in the early 70s, I don't know what that's worth today, but it's probably over $1 million, I'm going to speculate. And he said no. And he said no because the offer of money came with a contingency. The contingency was, we'll take your screenplay, but we're going to get some known actors in here to play the role. And he said no. Now, think about today if you're flat broke, had no money, you just sold your best friend so he could have a better life, living out of wherever he lived out of, but didn't have a place of residence, had $100 in his bank account, had no job, had no guaranteed future, has a track record of failing at what he's doing. It takes a lot of guts to say no to what today would be $1 million, right, handed over to you. And the only reason you're saying no is you're pursuing your dream. Well, by now you probably know who I'm talking about. This is the path of Sylvester Stallone and the whole Rocky franchise, right? And you know the outcome of what happened next. They agreed to let him play the role, but they put a very small budget on the production, which really was almost a strike against it. At the time, it was $1 million to produce a movie like this for $1 million. It wasn't a strong budget. So he had to recruit people in his family and friends, people effectively would work for nothing just to keep the price down of this budget film, right? And they got through it for under $1 million. It debuted in one of those kind of screenplay events, and people loved it. And we know the history from there. It turned into a $1.4 billion franchise, one of the greatest franchises in the movie industry. All because he didn't give up on his dream. So if you asked him, is a dream worth fighting for? He'd say, hell yeah, it made him who he is today. If he had sold that, he knew damn well he wouldn't be able to live with himself. Things would change. So let's get into this here. Is your dream worth fighting for? Before we get going with this, I just want to knock off a few things as to why maybe we're not fighting anymore. And I see people every day that are just zombies in this world that walk around. I know you do too, right? That are just going through the motions, waiting for the next thing to get done, right? Just so they can say it's getting done. And there's a few things I've kind of accumulated over time and ideas when I see why people give up the fight. Because everybody starts with a dream, no doubt. Back in the day, when we're in our teens, we have an idea what our life is going to look like when we're 25. When we're 25, we have an idea what our life is going to look like when we're 35. 35 when we're 45 or 50, and so on. Right? But at some point, that passion, that fire goes out, goes away. When I was early in my rugby career, my entire dream was based around playing for the United States Eagles, the U.S. Eagle team. I committed everything I had into pursuing that dream. And the day finally came after moving up the ranks, right? Playing a bunch of years in international with our territorial side. The opportunity finally came. I got called out to Colorado, a camp, where pretty much if you get called out to that camp, unless you really screwed up, you're going to be selected to play on a national side. And this is one thing you'll get out of this presentation today, that a dream is a way to guide us through life, and the dream is not the end goal. And you'll see how this plays out. That may be confusing right now. I had to make a decision when I got that call because I knew if I said yes to going out there, confident that I would make the team. And I knew if I made the team, about every 6 weeks, I'd be away from home for 2 weeks. And at this time, we had just had my first son. And of course, for me in the moment, and it wasn't even a tough decision, my wife and my first child were so much more important to me because, well, they were. So I had to pass up on the opportunity to fulfill that part of my dream, created a new, bigger dream around it. So I want to talk about a couple things that stop us from pursuing our dream, and then get into what it takes to reignite that fire and how to push for it every single day, and the value that it provides in allowing us to be the best we can be. Eddie mentioned what I do now. I spend a lot of time in what I call the self-mastery space, right? Every day becoming the best version of us possible. Becoming our own best role model. When you think about that for a second, why would we have a role model out here somewhere that we strive to be? Why wouldn't we strive to be our best role model every single day? Well, that's a high standard. Why shouldn't we have the highest of standards? Why should somebody else have a higher standard than we have of ourselves? Fear of failure, that's a big one. It's where we start, right? And you're going to hear me bring up this fear thing a bunch of times today, and I'll go through it as quick as I can. Fear of failure. Fear of failure is really hedged in one deep-seated fear, which I'll talk about a little further along here, and that's simply the fear of the unknown. Fear of failure, yeah, we fear failure. We fear being judged. We fear loss. But it's really not knowing that holds us back, and our lack of courage and our supporting peers around us make it okay to cower to it. Lack of clarity. We'll spend some time on this one in our next 2 slides. Lack of clarity is really not having a clear dream, not knowing where we want to go in the first place. Every morning when you wake up, do you know why you wake up? Is that fire there to drive you regardless of the circumstances that come upon us each day. So we can't change a lot of the circumstances in our life, but we can change the influence the circumstances have on us every single day. That's just choices. But without clarity in our life, what we're doing in the first place makes it very difficult. Makes it difficult to make the right decisions, to constantly move our train down the track. Society's impact. Society is brutal on pursuing your dreams. Going all the way back to high school, so I deal a lot with kids, because I think they're the most underserved group right now in terms of they're so misguided by our guidance. Misguided by our guidance. You go back to the kids in high school, they sit with counselors, and I'm not knocking the counselors, right, at all. So if anyone is that type of counselor, don't take it that way, right? But they start trying to figure out what a kid is going to do in college based on how they might be able to make some money, based on some fundamental skills that they're good at, never built around their unique, God-given, innate skills and talents that make them so freaking magical, make them awesome. They don't ever take that into consideration. What makes an awesome human being an awesome human being? And it's very often that a child will get placed on a track that works away from who they are uniquely inside. And every day as they pursue it through the end of high school, into college, into more classes, into graduate school, into their profession, where now they're vested. Very hard to change directions, right? Every day it steals a piece of their soul, it steals a piece of their dream. That's what I mean by society's impact. And it's not just kids, no doubt. Means over ends. We'll go back to kids. You know, when you first learned how to ride a bike or desired to ride a bike, never did you stop for a second and contemplate that you've never ridden a bike. Bike meant freedom when we were children, right? It was an accomplishment. Gave us something special. But when we decided to ride a bike, we didn't stop and say, well, I'm too short. My legs barely reach. Didn't study that book long enough. Didn't pass any quizzes or tests on it. Nobody really even showed me all the parts of the bike. We didn't go through that. What are my ends in order to create a means? We started with the end result, the means. I'm going to ride that bike. I'm going to ride it right away. I'm going to pedal away from my parents. Super cool. Freedom. And when we hopped on it, we fell off it. No quicker than we hit the ground were we back on it. We didn't worry about whether or not somebody was going to judge us or we're going to lose something or we're going to worry about all the stuff as adults we worry about. We just did it until it was complete. We had our freedom. In time, that formula changes. You want to do something? Well, how much time do I have? How much money do I have? How much do I know? Who do I have? What are my resources? We go through all this formula. I guess if it was meant to be, it would be. Anybody ever mutter those words to yourselves? Don't raise your hand, because that's not a good one to raise your hand to. If it was meant to be, it would be. That's the way we make ourselves feel good when we know we're bowing out, playing small, crawling out of that situation. Now, if it's meant to be, we got to make it happen. That's the only way it'll happen. Stuff doesn't happen for us. Stuff doesn't even happen to us. We happen to the world. There are some in this society that think everything happens to them, and therefore, they're 100% right. Everything does happen to them. And they constantly sit back and just respond like a leaf floating on an open body of water. Instead of going out and creating, being the boulder dropped in the lake and creating a ripple effect around them. It's just a different way in which we see the world. Stuck in practice mode. I bring this up just because I see habitual stutters, professional studiers, right? That instead of doing, we talk ourselves into thinking we need more knowledge and more study and just more stuff before we can do it. It's our way to bail out from doing what we know we have to do but are afraid to do. And everyone around us, not everyone, people around us tend to support that methodology because they're in the same rut. And then there's people that'll sell us more knowledge stuff because we'll keep buying it. Something about information and knowledge, right? So at home, we also have a martial arts, lifestyle fitness center, big gym. We have a lot of people in there. that are there for different reasons. It's a lifestyle fitness center on one end, yoga and Pilates and cardio kickboxing and all that kind of stuff. But over here, we compete in Muay Thai and Jiu-Jitsu and MMA cage fighting, right? One thing I've learned in that gym, we've owned that gym for about 7 years now, right? One thing I've learned, particularly about martial arts, is that you cannot learn martial arts from YouTube. Think about this for a second, though. Watch how this goes down, okay? There's a lot of information on YouTube, which is very, very good, including in the martial arts space, right? I could be brand new to, say, Jiu-Jitsu, which is a grappling art. It's a submission art. And I could study great teachers, and I can learn effectively, at least in thought, how to pull off what's called an arm bar, right? Leverage on the arm where you get somebody to quit so you don't break their arm. I could even go as far as teaching it. But I can't do it. Teaching it is just parroting the teacher, regurgitating over here, but doing it, the actual knowledge, pulling it off, only comes from experience. Information you can listen to and learn and study. Knowledge is experiential. There is no other way to gain knowledge in this world. You have to step into it and actually do it. And this stuff in practice mode thing, right? That's the problem with it, is you're not going anywhere. And there's no faster way to move forward than to step into it and do it. Distractions. I'd ask you to raise your hand. Do you ever get distracted? And 2/3 of the room would put your hand up. So I'll save you from that, right? Distractions are another way to avoid what we know we should be doing. We have a dream, we have a fire deep inside of us, right? It's burning, it wants to get out. And when we do not pursue this, it creates resistance in our lives. The easiest way to anesthetize that is to distract ourselves. We say, well, I get distracted. No, you choose distractions. Distractions don't happen to you. We go out and we find distractions. We use them for a reason. And it's another way to sidetrack our progress and our growth. And then finally, time. We have a really, really, really weird relationship with time, right? Time is a concoction, a construct made up by man, and we have a very unique relationship with it in that we always talk about managing it. And if anybody's familiar with the management space, management is pretty much being able to control, right? To influence. Well, there's probably one thing that we have zero control over, and that is our time. We can't speed it up. We can't slow it down. We can't borrow it, trade it, hide it, put it away. I can't give you some, and you can't give me some. And this crazy relationship that we have with time, right, is simply one of those things that, well, it keeps us derailed in this process because we focus all of our energies on time. How many have ever used the excuse, oh, I didn't have enough time? Don't raise your hand because it'd be the entire room, right? I ran out of time, or if I had more time. What if for 1 second, just 1 second, you change the language, and you're changing the language to empower you so you can get more out of this ride than you do right now. You change the language. Instead of, I didn't have enough time, think about talking to a child. You made a commitment to a child, and every parent has done this. Oh, sorry, I just didn't have enough time. I meant to. Your intentions don't mean crap to a child. You know that, right? Intentions don't mean squat to a child. The only thing that matters is how you make them feel. You promise to do something with them and for them, and you turn around and say, oh, sorry, I didn't have enough time. Really meant to. You're like, okay, they'll accept it, but deep down inside, you just hurt them again. They remember how you make them feel. And our disempowerment comes from this weird relationship we have with time, what we focus on, right? I didn't have enough time. What if you change your language? And you held yourself to the standard. No longer will I blame time because it's not time's fault. Time is the one thing that's consistent amongst all of us. We all have the exact same amount, and it's predictable as hell. Which part of it screwed you up? Did it show up too soon? Did it speed up or slow down? No, it's the most consistent thing in our lives. Yet we use it as an excuse. What if you change your language and said, instead of saying I didn't have enough time, you looked at your child and said, child, I simply chose to do something else in the time that I had instead of doing what I promised to you. And you change your focus back over onto the actions in time, not on time itself, because the actions we can control. The actions are decisions that we can influence. How many times will you show up to that meeting with your child, being honest to you and being honest to them, and voice those words to them? The answer is it's going to change your behavior. And you're going to start getting back on track, getting out of life what you want to get out of life. Right? So let's talk about direction here for a second. Lack of direction is one of the biggest things I see amongst adults, because we have these ideas and these big aspirations early on, and we lose direction in life. And then we find all small little things that fill our life, and we go day by day. We just get things done. Right? Finding clarity. This is very simple. Now I'm going to use some like these guru-like words here, right? Vision, mission, and purpose for a moment. And these mean something different to everyone. I needed them to mean something very specific and intentional in my life. So I'm going to share that with you, so maybe you can use them to shape your ideas, right? Vision is very simple. It's where you're going. I use the lighthouse because the lighthouse is so symbolic of providing vision. What does a lighthouse do? It provides safe harbor for boats when they're stuck out in storms. See, when the waters are calm and everything's good and the visibility is perfect, you don't need a lighthouse. You can navigate perfectly well. There's no pressure on the crew. Everybody's just, this is good. It's when things get difficult that we lose sight. When we're under pressure that we make poor decisions. This is where we lose track in life. Having a clear vision allows us to, at any given time, and any point in our life, to look up and see exactly where we're going. So even if we're off course here, we can right our course and straighten right back out. And we do get off course. There's nothing wrong with that. That's part of learning about life, right? But it's being able to straighten the ship back out and not constantly make the wrong turns, getting further and further and further from the port you're trying to get to. That's what a vision provides for us, both in our personal space, but in a business environment as well. Right? The next one here is your mission. So a vision is where you're going. A mission is how are you going to get there. Now in our gym, we have a very clear vision, right? It's to change the paradigms around fitness. I don't want fitness to be a thing that you have to do. I want fitness to be a lifestyle. Our mission is even clearer. In our fitness center, provide an outstanding experience for every one of our clients every single time they walk through our door. Now, to add a little context to how big that is, we do over 400 classes a month at maybe 12 or 15 people that come to each class. Somebody do the math on that. It's like 4,500 human interactions. I'm sorry, I said month, I said week, 400 classes a week. Think about all those human interactions. And if we did not have a clear mission by our staff, we're about 25 strong in our gym, that wouldn't happen. And it's very simple. Every single decision we make every single day has got to get filtered through our mission, provide an outstanding experience for every single one of our clients every single time they walk in our gym. And I know if we do that, they'll come back. And that's why it allows them to be able to fulfill our vision, which is to make this a lifestyle for people, not just a thing they got to do each day. And then finally, purpose. This is your dent. Remember, I ask my kids every day, how big's your dent today? How much did you matter today? How are you changing the world today to be a better place, right? This is the purpose, why we do what we do. This here is the fuel, right? This is what gives us what we need when we're at our weakest, most compromised, most challenged. If you ask yourself, man, how big's my dent? This is what gets us past our own little selfish self, right? There's times we want to feel bad about ourselves. We want the pity, right? We want other people to feel bad for us too. This is what rises up above that garbage, okay? So let's take on a little piece here that I got to address. And this, as we came through our real estate career, and I was in real estate, I said from the late 90s, we got into the educational side, and I quickly found in the educational side that no matter how good your instruction was, it still didn't make a difference in how successful people were going to be. There's people that could take a couple little chunks of information, put it into place, start learning and growing. They run out to be rock stars, and others you could give them the world and they won't do anything with it, right? So I had to call out this difference. And I don't know if you guys ever heard The War of Art, Mr. Stephen Pressfield, right? Great author. So he wrote this book as it related to the creative space, but it applies to all of us. I just want to talk about it for a second before we move on here, right? Amateurs versus pros. And I don't mean this in terms of the typical meaning of it, is it are you an amateur in life or a pro in life? It's how you address the game. It's really a mindset of how we approach it. And this is this quote, which I'll fulfill on the next slide here, right? The amateur plays for fun, the professional plays for keep. The amateur plays part-time, professional plays full-time. The amateur is a weekend warrior, the professional shows up 7 days a week. And the most important part there is it shows up 7 days a week. It's not a function really of time as much as it is how we actually approach it, right? Oops, that went backwards, sorry about that. So amateur versus pro, the art of pretending. Amateurs fear failure and pros crave it. Now, make no mistake. No one out there seeks failure. But there is a paradigm shift that we make in time on how we comprehend failure. We understand that failure is another learning experience. Failure gives us more clear, concise guidance in what to do next than success does. Oftentimes we can be successful in something and have no freaking idea in the world what we just did to make it successful. But when you screw something up, you know damn well what you did wrong, and what not to do any longer, because it ain't getting the results that you want. So a professional approach to it embraces failure as just rungs on a ladder. And each one moves us up, not backwards. Whereas an amateur sees them as setbacks and oftentimes will get inside their own head and use them as leverage to get out of the game. Amateurs leap for their dreams where pros build a bridge. So picture this. And this is this is one of those guru things, hey, jump off the cliff and build your wings on the way down, right? And I get that, and I get kind of like the fanciness about that. But here's the truth of it. That's just not how life works, right? But the amateur viewpoint on it is I'm going all in, and if it works, great. If it doesn't, I'm out. That's not how life works either. It's not that easy. It takes brick over brick, day in and day out, week in and week out, month in, month out, until you've built this bridge from where you are to where you want to go. Professional knows it's a long-term play. This isn't a day trade here. We're in it for the long run. There will be setbacks. There will be stormy weather. There will be times when the architect stuff didn't work out and we had to redesign something along the way. Fine. But because we have a lighthouse and we have a mindset of the long-term role here, we ain't stopping. We will get to the other side. I don't know how many human beings I've met in my lifetime that have a partially built bridge. They had a destination. They'd put the work, time, energy, and effort in, and somewhere along the way, the desire to complete their bridge left them. And in a moment, we're going to get to some steps to resurrect that. Okay? Amateur leap for their dreams, pros build a bridge, and finally, amateurs want to be noticed and pros want to be remembered. Amateur looks at this game as, hey, look at me and look what I'm doing. Look how successful I'm going to be. When they set their goal on something, it's because how they think other people are going to see them when they achieve it. Or a professional, in my opinion, approaches it a little differently. They're doing it for the impact they're going to make while they're here on this earth, how they're going to be remembered. And the difference there is when you make it very superficial and things go south on you, they get a little difficult. It's very hard to have what you need internally to overcome those challenges. But when you know it's not about you, it's about the bigger picture, the impact, the dent that you're leaving behind, you feel a greater responsibility to keep pursuing. There's a question asked to entrepreneurs all the time, what's your why, right? And very often, I'm sure as many of you would reflect, well, my why is my parents, my kids, my wife, and my kids. And I'm going to share with you guys a thought, just to bring this one step deeper. The idea that there's more to our why than just our immediate family. When you think about it, every single one of you are so damn unique, so damn special, unlike any human being that's ever been designed, ever walked this earth, ever will walk this earth. It's very difficult to comprehend that your only biggest purpose was for your family. Now you're bigger than that. So I break my why into two sides. My priority, that's my wife, my kids. No doubt they're my absolute priority in all that I do. But there's another side, and I call it your greater responsibility. That's the dent we're going to leave behind. That's taking all of these skills that you have, unique, special, unlike anyone else, and making the absolute most of them while we're here so that we can make the biggest impact that we can. My son, leaving high school, had gotten a scholarship to go wrestle, which for me was great because it cost me less money, right? But more importantly, the school he was going to is 3 hours away, which is, I can still kind of touch him, but he ain't coming home to do laundry over the weekend. I'm like, this is perfect, right? So we go up on a Friday to visit the coach, me, my wife, my child, right? And everything was just too perfect. The coach was awesome. The school, nice small campus, was awesome. It was in New Hampshire. It's 3 hours from where I am in Connecticut. The spot on the team that his weight would fit into the weight class was perfect. We just hit it off as a home run, and I'm like, this is just perfect. Well, that Saturday, my son woke up, and I could tell something was wrong, something was off with him, and I asked him straight up, Patrick, what's going on? And he's very straight and honest. Dad, I'm going to be honest, I didn't sleep at all last night. Why didn't you sleep, son? He said very clearly, I can't imagine sitting in college right now. I'm not ready to go back to school. Oh. Okay, son, what do you want to do? Because we got a plan. Long story short, that Tuesday, 4 days later, we loaded up the Suburban. We live in Connecticut. We drove 32 hours, he and I straight, 32 hours out to Breckenridge, Colorado. I handed him the keys to the truck and flew home the very next day. He wanted to go live on his own. He wanted to get out where he was. He had a buddy he was going to go with, and he wanted to do it now. The purpose of all this, right, is being willing to do what our heart desires. Okay? Be ready to follow what you know is driving you from the inside. So let's get into it. So this is something my wife threw in, and my wife's funny sometimes. Like, she slipped this in without telling me right before I sent the slides over to Bob. I'm like, great, honey. But it's very befitting for the way we approach this game, right? I thought it was kind of funny. Things are going well. This is when we get things on track in our lives. Then we start thinking too much, right? We're going, they're going too well. Then we mull it over and we start thinking even deeper, and then we self-sabotage our process. I'm going to give us some tools here so that we don't do this through this journey. The art of pursuing your dream, and this is actually kind of the heart of this presentation here. And again, I realize everybody in this room is in a different place. But I do believe we do have that one commonality, that one denominator, being the entrepreneurial spirit. Whether we're brand new or, I was going to say brand old, but that doesn't even make sense. Whether we're new to the journey or we're further along in the journey, right? We still have that entrepreneurial spirit, and that's the part that I'm going to speak to in this here. Number one, get crystal clear on where you're going. There's a process here to get us down this path. And that speaks to your vision, your mission, and your purpose. Having that lighthouse in your life, right? So that when things get rocky, when you're out on the water and things get rough and a fog rolls in and the seas are tall, and I'm a boater, so I can relate to this often, right? Things can get challenging. It's under pressure that we make mistakes. It's under pressure that we make poor decisions. Well, as long as you have a clear path, it's very easy to believe in the process. Even though you don't get it in the moment, you can't see past the pulpit on the front of the boat, you can trust that you're going the right direction because you have a clear outcome. Number 2, put guardrails in place. Now, this is a big training that I do in this one space. It's called having a personal code. In a business, it would be a business code. Guardrails are the laws that you live your life by. Now, we often hear about core values and people having core values, honesty and integrity and things like that, and that's fantastic, right? But the challenge is core values are nothing more than a set of beliefs. You could tell your child that you're an honest person and then come home and tell them that you didn't have enough time and there's already a conflict. Core values are a set of beliefs. A code is the laws you live your life by. A code enforces a behavior that your core values represent. A code enforces the behavior that your core values represent. Now, if you wanted to see how this plays out in life, you look at a million different people that have reached great levels of success, made poor decisions, and lost everything they've earned in life. Tiger Woods would be a perfect example of it. And I could put list after list after list of people whose guardrails are non-existent. Let them get off track. Our pursuing your dream requires us to have a set of rules we live our life by. This is the Constitution. When you talk about a nation, it's not our physical boundaries that separate nations. We do have physical boundaries, but that's not what, when you step from Michigan into Canada, it don't feel any different, right? It's the same damn land growing here. But it's the laws, the Constitution that defines a nation, no different than us as human beings. We don't have time to go through creating a code, but it's something that I would suggest is a worthy thing to look into. Next here. Right. Feel the fear and decide to do it anyways. I said earlier, there's one underlying fear that us as human beings have a very, very difficult time with, and that's the fear of the unknown, not knowing what's next. It's not the fear of loss. It's not the fear of failure. It's not the fear of rejection. Because if I told you, hey, listen, if you did this, some friends are going to reject you, but it's going to move you forward, you're going to achieve this, you'd be like, I'm all in. But because you don't know, it becomes crippling to us. And you have to appreciate and embrace that it's part of the game. I often use this analogy as an example, right? If I had put any one of you in a long tunnel, like a train tunnel, put you in a long tunnel. And I said, listen, there's a stack of $10,000 sitting at the end of this tunnel, but the tunnel is pitch black, can't see a thing, as in you can't see your hand here, right? So the only thing you have to do is walk to the end of the tunnel. What I won't tell you is how long the tunnel is or how long it will take you, but you'll get through it. That's all you got. Think about this. So try to imagine this in your head. So I put you in, I shut the big door behind, and there's no trains coming the other way, okay? So you don't have to worry about that shit, all right? About a half an hour into this thing of pitch blackness, no communications, you can't see behind you, you can't see in front of you, you can't see your hand. You're just walking. You start talking to yourself. Is this a joke? Am I on TV? Am I really going to get to the other end? Do I even trust the person who set this thing up? Now, an hour in, you're feeling fatigued because you don't know how far you've come. An hour and a half in, the voice is so loud inside about how hard it is, how parts of your body hurt. You have no idea if you're making any progress. The likeliness of continuing gets less and less each and every step. That's how crippling not knowing is. Now, I come over here and I gave your buddy exact same tunnel, side by side, same length. The only difference, all the same rules, the only difference is at the end of his tunnel, I put a little light. And every step, that light gets a little brighter, ever so bigger. And it's that level of knowledge, of knowing, that each step moves them towards a bigger place, that inspires them with each step. In this tunnel, we're getting uninspired. We're losing our will. In this tunnel, we're being inspired. That's the power of knowing. We don't always know. The quickest way to know is to do. But as part of this process, right, is to feel the fear, act in courage, and decide to do anyways. And that brings us to our next slide. Simply execute. Do. Do. I already told you that there is no feedback we get, there's no way to learn without actually doing, living, taking the experience, right? Think about this for a second. You ever sit in a parking lot? You go to some place you've never gone to before. You had to use the GPS to get there, right? And you get there. Now you got to go home. You're like, man, I don't even know how to go home. So you put the next direction in to leave the parking lot, and you're waiting for it to tell you where to go. And you're like, I'd really, 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 really like to know whether I got to go right or left out of this parking lot. Satellites can't even see you because you're sitting still. You're not moving. But the second you start driving, it starts locating you, it starts giving you feedback. And if all goes well, by the time you get to the edge of the parking lot, it'll tell you which way to go. More importantly, this is a takeaway here. If you make the wrong turn in your taking action, executing, you'll get specific feedback on exactly what to do next. Hey, Pat, take a right up here. Get back on track. It will correct you, the feedback we get in the actions that we take. That's the importance of execution. Instead of talking ourselves into every reason why we can't and shouldn't execute, the only way to move forward is execute. And whether or not we make a wrong turn doesn't matter. What if we make a series of wrong turns? We end up way off track. What will your GPS do? It'll provide you new course. Hey, listen, I know you had a plan here. You just screwed up the plan totally. But I still know where you want to go, and I'm going to write you a whole new plan. We're still going to get you there. Just keep moving. And that gets into this next step here. The next step, that one. Analyze, adapt, and redeploy. Everything we do provides feedback for us. If we want to keep making progress, we got to analyze the feedback, pay attention to it, listen to it, even if it's painful. You know, pain gets a really bad name, bad rap in this world, right? Suffering is one of those things that we construct and force upon ourselves, but it's not necessary. Pain is necessary. Pain is one of the greatest inspiring direction givers we know. Pain is never wrong in a direction of feedback it gives us. Like if we're running along the road, we're going out for a jog, and we twist our ankle, we get a tremendous amount of pain that comes up through our body and hits our brain and says, stop! Pain alert here. Telling us to stop doing what we're doing so we don't make things worse, right? Now, hypothetically, if I could turn that off and not listen to it, things would get worse. But in life, we can turn that pain off. We anesthetize our pains in a whole crazy bunch of ways. Some of them the most obvious, with drugs and alcohol, right? You get to the end of the day, didn't get the results we wanted, we're in pain, so we make that shit go away. We're not analyzing, adapting, and redeploying. We're hiding and running. If we want to create change in our lives, we got to grow from every experience. Pain is one of our greatest instructors we'll get, provided we listen to it. So this one little step is something I probably use 50 times in a day. What just happened? Right? Analyze it. Create the change that I have to do and redeploy immediately. Don't wait any longer. Don't knock pain. Suffering is a little different. Suffering is something that we impose on ourselves and is not necessary. Nowhere is written that we have to suffer. Pain's a good thing. Finally here, don't look back. There's a reason why the rear view mirror in the front windshield of our car is only about 5% of the size of the windshield. It's because there's so little in our past that matters in terms of where we're going. Think about in a car, right? No matter what direction you took to get here, the turns you made, that has so little influence on the decisions that you have out in front of you. You can still go anywhere you want. There's learning from the past, and that's the only thing we should take forward with us. Outside of that, looking backwards slows down our progress and can put us on a crash course. I hear people all the time go back and they live through the glory days, right? They live through the glory days in such a way that it steals their drive to appreciate and achieve new glory. Follow me on this. Happens all the time. We have a desire to grow, to expand, to win. It's deep in our DNA. It's part of who we are. That will never leave us. But when we're not growing, expanding, winning, right? There's that desire that's got to get filled. We'll oftentimes go back to when we won in the past. Let's relive our victories from the past. And what happens is that anesthetizes that drive, that need to have it here and now. So instead of recreating it, we're reliving it and staying stuck in the mud in a rut, not moving. Again, that flame is there for a reason. And looking in a rearview mirror is a way to put it out. Keep your eyes forward. Don't look back. Embrace the journey. I said at the very beginning, we need a vision. And I also shared with you an idea that whether or not we get to the vision, and this may sound paradoxical here, that's not the most important part of this. Many of you remember the arms race, right? When we were fighting with, or bickering with Russia and other countries and racing to create these interballistic missiles. That was the same time that Kennedy decided to be a good time to go to the moon. And he made it a very patriotic cause, be the first to put a man on the moon. That was his vision. And he put it out there in front of everybody. It was very easy to stand behind that, which made it very easy to rally everything from financing and NASA and everybody else to get this pulled off, right? Put a man on the moon. It's amazing. Be the first in the world, in the entire history of the world, to pull this off. That was his vision, but it wasn't his purpose. His purpose was to create an interballistic missile that can carry a warhead from the land of the United States of America all the way over to Russia in the event we needed it. So we could bomb them from here. That was why we went to the moon. And I share that story here so we can put in context our vision and our purpose. We set a big enough vision that in the journey, the constant pursuit of achieving it along the way will automatically fulfill our purpose, the dent that we leave here. And that was exactly how Kennedy did it. Now, he did achieve his mission. It's his purpose, his vision. It's less about arriving and more about the constant, steady, continuous process to getting there. And this is what we find. That effort, that experience, ultimately, is what fulfills our greatest desires. The vision is simply the lighthouse, keeps us on path here. So I'll end this presentation here the same way I started it, right? Is your dream worth fighting for? You know, Rocky, I like him, Rocky better than Sylvester. Rocky, he said he was inspired when he saw that fight I told you about, because he saw a man stand up against life, take the blows life had for him, and keep going. That became his vision. That became his mission, his purpose in the moment. Guys, I want to thank you very much. I want to welcome you to NoteExpo 2018. Thank you very much.